All right. Now we're all set and we can hear loud and clear. All right. Yes. All right. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we made it through. All right. Wonderful. Okay, everybody. Welcome. And isn't it wonderful that you can finally hear me? What was he saying? Wow, we really wanted to know. Well, guess what? I'm going to tell you what I was saying. Is that okay? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome tonight. We are excited for you all to join us in this next series, our next region, talking about our Turn Obesity Around. We're in the Midwest region tonight. Our states of Illinois, whichever way you want to go with it, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, Wisconsin, and West Virginia. All right. Of course, we got others who are here and join us each time we have a session. You all are welcome as well. We're looking forward to a great session on this evening. We do want to acknowledge our national leadership, beginning with our president, Dr. Jerry Young, our general secretary, Dr. Alvin Edwards, and the chair of our federal faith-based initiatives, Dr. Alvin Love. And of course, I'm Michael Miner. I'm the national director of our Hope Health Ministry. Guess what? You can learn more about us at our website. Which way I got to go? Go this way. There we go. HopeNBC.com. And we're excited to share this session. And we do acknowledge the collaboration of Novo Nordisk, which has been a great collaborator with us in us sharing about Turn Obesity Around. Now, look, I want to just put a little highlight on this. You know, my pastor emeritus would always remind me that we're talking about a 180-degree turn, not a 360-degree turn. So we're talking about turn obesity around. We want to be the opposite of where we are and not end up where we were before. I just want to make sure that we got that as we move forward. Okay. We do want to, for everyone to take notes tonight. We want you to ask questions. If you're on your phone and everything, you can do *6 when we open up the phones. We want this to be interactive. We want you to ask questions. And we have a great team here that's ready to share information with you. And we're so glad to be able to share with our Midwest regions and others that have joined us on tonight. All right. We were hoping to have when Dr. Boise Kimber, who's the chair of our board of the National Baptist Convention, when he pops on, we'll make sure to him to provide greetings on behalf of our national president. But we are glad to have some of the other regional and state leaders, and we'll acknowledge them as we get towards the end. All right. Again, we want to come and share with you tonight about Turn Obesity Around. We are restreaming. We're restreaming tonight's session on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you want to go to our National Baptist Convention Hope Health Ministry Facebook page, then you'll be able to come and share it. And we already see a number of people sharing them tonight. All right, let's introduce tonight our team, our panelists tonight. First up, let me add her to the spotlight. We have Sister Nettie Johnson, and Sister Nettie Johnson is one of our awesome team members. She's an author, a podcaster, a credentialed health educator, and founder of Education for Transformation, a wellness organization that develops and delivers curated education and programming addressing Black health disparities. Science-based, faith-empowered solutions for healthy weight management is Nettie's area of passion and specialty. We're so glad that she's a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Culture of Health leader. Nettie also holds multiple fitness and health coaching certification. She is a member of the Society for Public Health Education. And of course, she didn't want to forget this, Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Nettie also serves as a health ambassador trainer and the National Physical Fitness Coordinator for the National Baptist Convention Hope Health Ministry. Thank you for being such a wonderful panelist, Sister Nettie.
Glad to be here today, Dr. Minor. Look forward to the discussion.
All right, excellent. And of course, we're going to add to that tonight. We have Sister Ellen Mcknight. We're going to add her spotlight tonight. And we're so thankful for Sister Ellen tonight. I'm telling you, we are in high cotton. Sister Ellen was in a meeting with the mayor. Amen. And she thought it would have just been harm if she didn't make it out tonight to share with you all. So kudos. And let y'all know tonight how much our Hope Health team thinks of you all. Now, Ellen is the principal partner of the Maxine Firm. The Maxine Firm is a nutrition, public health, and wellness firm. The firm is powered by a network. Notice she's not solo, a network of healthcare professionals whose primary objective is chronic disease prevention in urban and rural communities. Promoting healthy lifestyle changes and providing urban communities with economic development opportunities by way of fresh food access is Ellen's life goal and passion. She is a member of the Baton Rouge Dietetic Association, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, National Organization of Blacks in Dietetics and Nutrition, and a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. She also serves as the National Nutrition Coordinator for the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, Hope Health Ministry, and she's on her way to become a doctor. Amen. Not an MD, but one with a doctor and be credentialed. So happy, glad to have you with us tonight, Ellen. All right. All right, let's get things started tonight and talk a little bit about obesity. Okay. One of the things that we concerned about when it comes to obesity is that sadly, in many of our Black churches, if you're not careful and you get around a lot of people just like you are, you'll think that obesity is just the way it ought to be. Everybody's kind of heavy set, big bone. Everybody eats the same kind of things, and we think that it's all right. So one of the things that we want to be to do to turn obesity around is to be able to go and work and let us know that, hey, there is a better way. There is another way. A quick story I always like to share about our church is that when I first got there, everybody was kind of a special size. But as we started working and exercising and changing up on our meals and stuff, things started to change. And I noticed that once everybody started seeing everybody losing weight and getting a little bit better off, everybody wanted to do the same thing. And then with some of the meals, I learned that it wasn't that they didn't want to prepare healthier meals. They didn't think their families would even want to eat the meals. So one of the things that the church fellowship meals provided was that one thing we know, if it's a fellowship meal, is free. And even though folks may say they don't want to eat it, if it's there in front of them, they're going to eat it. They may gripe, but they'll eat it. And guess what happened? They found out that their families didn't really have a problem with some of this quote unquote healthy stuff. And I'm sure that Ellen will come in and say more about that, but I thought I'd add that on. All right. And look, just before we go on and hear from our panelists, I want to introduce the person who's going to be the tag team partner, who's going to take us the rest of the way, say a few things about obesity and work with our panelists. None other than the person who's the top person in my life. I introduce you tonight to Sister Lottie Minor, who is our project director for our All of Us research program and is going to continue on as your moderator. Sister Minor?
Well, we thank you, Dr. Minor, and we apologize for being tardy. We had 2 webinars at the same time. When I learn how to replicate myself, y'all, I'll be dangerous. I will be dangerous. All right. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with you. I'm so appreciative of my husband, and those of you who know him know that he was has been pretty ill, but he was nice enough to pinch hit for me, and I do appreciate him for doing that. I also want to now acknowledge our members of our Hope Health Ministry who are present here tonight. I see our panelists, Sister Cincinnati Johnson and Sister Ellen Mcknight. I see Sister Linda Carper, who's also doing double duty on 2 webinars. I see Sister Bettina Campbell. I don't know who else from Hope is here. Those are the ones that I see on the screen jumping out at me right now. Hopefully I'm not missing anyone. So happy to be here tonight. I'm sure my husband has already done it, but I'd be remiss if I did not repeat again that this is a production of National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated Hope Health Ministry. Our president is Dr. Jerry Young. Our general secretary is Dr. Alvin Edwards. Our chair of the Federal Faith-Based Development Initiative is Dr. Alvin Love. And our national director of the NBC USA liaison to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is none other than my husband, Dr. Michael Miner. We want to also acknowledge our sponsors for this evening, Nova Nordisk. Nova Nordisk. We want to thank them for their generous sponsorship. And we want to just move right into our presentation for tonight. Of course, let me say this. Let me acknowledge our Midwest region, who we are so glad to have on: Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, Wisconsin, and West Virginia. All right, folks. Let's get started. I want to bring our 2 wonderful panelists up so that you can see them. And I'm always so happy to remove myself from the spotlight on the screen. That is one of the highlights of my duties as a moderator. All right. We have Sister Ellen Mcknight and Sister Nettie Johnson. And I am looking for my introductions. I am sorry. Okay, he's done that already. He said, my husband is phenomenal, y'all. He said he's already done it. Let's get started. I want to begin with Sister Nettie sharing about some holistic approaches to weight management and the physical fitness aspect of behavior modification. And we know that behavior modification is one of the ways that we can turn our numbers around. And that sounds kind of painful, behavior modification. The word is not as the actual process is not as ominous as the word is. Let me say it that way. So I'm gonna spotlight her, and we're gonna just have a little bit of a talk here. If I can get my computer to do the right thing. Let's see, remove. All right, Sister Nettie. Let's look at 2013. When the Office of Minority Health asked us to conduct a pilot called Turn the Beat Around to test the efficacy of using health ambassadors to affect sustained better individual and communal health. The study took place in several Alabama cities, and the results of the study showed that the intervention was indeed effective. So that started our turnaround efforts. We followed that success with efforts around the Affordable Care Act and also by NIH's All of Us research, which you saw in the background on my screen. So I want Sister Nettie to talk a little bit about ways we can turn obesity around.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Miner. And thanks everybody for this opportunity. This is a really important topic, and it's one that's very dear to my heart. And it's an important one. When we look at data, across the United States, they estimate that about 69% of adults in this nation are either overweight or obese. And obesity is a really it's quite a complex health issue that comes from a number of different factors. But one of the reasons why we wanted to do this is because, and Dr. Miner mentioned a little bit earlier about how when something is extremely prevalent, I mean, when we're talking about 69%, that's almost 3 out of 4. When things are very prevalent, we tend to normalize them. We tend to normalize conditions that may not necessarily be the most helpful. And when we look at the disease of obesity, there are a number of health consequences, including complications with high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It is often tied to type 2 diabetes, a lot of coronary heart disease, stroke, gallbladder disease. The list goes on and on. Even has connections with certain types of cancers, including thyroid cancer, breast cancer, liver cancer, gallbladder cancer, and the like. So the fact that although this is a very prevalent condition and it's problematic as it relates to our health, the good news is that there is help and there's hope. And that's what we're talking about as part of the Hope Ministry on how we can help people to kind of turn this condition around. For years and years and years, traditionally, we have heard if you just eat less and move more, eat less and move more. That can help if you have a condition of overweight or the disease of obesity, that's the solution. And that is the basis of the foundation when we look at an energy deficit for weight loss. But obesity and overweight are so much more complex than that. It also involves our biology. There's a genetic component, there are environmental components. And so all of these things come together to make it more complex. And so our solutions need to be a little bit more complex. I am going to start off with the very basic portion of that about the energy balance part. And then Sister Minor and Sister Ellen, we can kind of take it a little bit into different directions. When we're talking about trying to get into a caloric deficit, that just basically means that we want to make sure that our body is expending more energy than we're taking in and in food. And so one of the most important things that we can do is to make sure that we are active and that we try to up the amount of activity in our lives. In general, we are a pretty sedentary society. And I think that over this past year, when the world got topsy-turvy with the pandemic and many people went in and were sheltering in at home, I think a lot more people, there have been some studies, particularly one through the Fitbit organization, that found that a lot of people tended to be more sedentary. And sedentary behavior is very problematic because we're not expending enough additional calories. But when we add activity back into our lifestyle or increase the amount of activity that we do, it can also have a metabolic effect. And there are many studies that have shown that when people lose weight, when they're coming out of a condition of overweight or obesity, and to maintain that, upping the exercise is tremendously important. If we can get above the standard recommendations, I've seen in a recent study that came out of Pennington Biomedical Research Center, working with individuals with the condition of obesity. And one of the key factors is that they all upped their activity to more than 175 minutes per week. We're not talking about per day, we're talking about per week. And also when we look at other data-driven or evidence-based statistics, for example, the National Rate Control Registry, I'm a member of that. It is the largest longitudinal study of individuals that have lost a significant amount of weight and been able to keep it off. So it's not just losing weight, it's being able to also maintain that. And some of the commonalities that they found there is that individuals that lose weight and keep it off usually exercise on about an average a day, an hour a day, so 60 minutes per week. So that's a lot more than that 175. So one of the aspects, and Ellen's going to talk about nutrition and we'll talk about some other interventions as well, but one of the things that I just want to kind of start off with is to consider how much are we moving, actually just moving our body in some kind of a way, because that can definitely help and be an add towards losing weight and maintaining a more healthy weight level for yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's something, the energy balance. Wow. Can you share a little bit, Nettie, about your personal story? I know you're passionate for this area of service. And I think your personal story will hit home in talking a little bit about the cost, as you said, the high cost of being overweight and the energy balance. I think that'll drive it home for everybody who's watching. I know every time I hear it, I just, it does something to me. So if you'll just share a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, not a problem. I actually, to me, it's a testimony. It shows how God just works all things and it puts us on different paths. I have been overweight most of my life. I was an overweight child, and it continued for about 3 decades of my life, up and down, up and down. There were a number of members of my family also carried excess weight. Some of us were in the overweight category, and some actually had the disease of obesity as well. But growing up, going back to that statement that was said earlier, it was normalized. We kind of just normalized it. Dr. Miner used the statement, I think he said about, I just was called thick. We just said that we were big boned. And we just accepted that this was normal. We were, even though I'm here in Louisiana, we're talking to the Midwest region. I was born and raised in Chicago, but we had that Southern cooking down. And it was just part of what we felt was normal for us. I didn't really start to have a change in my mindset and to really look at wanting to change things until my father passed away in his sleep when I was 17 years old. I got that call the first day of finals of my sophomore year, and it shook me and my family in ways that, you just never really, it's hard to accept death, especially when it is unexpected. The interesting thing is that we all kept saying, but Daddy wasn't sick. We were surprised because he didn't have cancer. He had not been in the hospital. All of these things that in our mind, I traditionally connected with illness. But in retrospect, in my 20s, looking back, I realized that I really don't remember my father being well or being in good health in my lifetime, because he did have a number of those conditions that I mentioned. He had hypertension, he had cholesterol issues, he had coronary artery disease. He had a number of these things that, again, I had normalized, just like gray hair. I felt that once you got to a certain age, you're going to have extra weight, and these conditions and being tied to medication is going to be part of it. In my 20s, when I was diagnosed with a heart condition, I decided to make some changes, and then began about a 15 to almost 20-year cycle of going up and down, up and down, up and down. I would lose weight because I would try any and every diet, and it would come off, and then the weight would come back with extra pounds. And this went back and forth. And I don't know if any of you all can relate to that. I tried to add it up at one point, and I was in between 250 and 300 pounds from the up and down, lose 40, gain 50, lose 50, back and forth. And it got so bad that I had to have my gallbladder removed. And in my effort to make myself well, I was making myself sick because I was going about it in a way that was not mindful. I was going with whatever was popular, whatever kind of, and just trying all types of things. To just kind of bring this to a close, in 2000, I made a decision to kind of end this problem, and I joined this national weight loss company for the 5th time, lost the weight, but still continued to struggle. And in a decade, I was not only a member, I worked for that organization, eventually directing operations for the states of Texas and Oklahoma. And I literally got to see thousands upon thousands of people who were having challenges with weight, and supporting and training and just really learning from that. And it wasn't until maybe 6 or 7 years ago when got to a place where I started to end the struggles, by really making it first a God thing, and really taking it from a diet that I'm going to be on, or a challenge that I'm going to do, or an exercise, these temporary fixes, and really coming up and defining a holistic overall approach of not only how I eat, how much I exercise, finding a fit that worked for my body and settling into that. And for me, the key was making it a God thing, realizing that these acts, this behavior change element, is not something that I was doing for a short period of time, or I was just going to struggle through. It was part of how I honored God through the stewardship of my body, realizing that this body is not my own. It was bought with a price, and it is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Using faith to empower the changes that I allowed to found through scientific and evidence-based discoveries, and finding what worked for me. And so for the past more than 6 years, maybe about 10 years or so, I've been working with other individuals to kind of help them to find their fit. What is it going to take to find a way to turn obesity around, to change that balance, so that we can settle in at a weight that is going to be comfortable and healthy for our body?
Wow, thank you. That's phenomenal. That's a touching, as you mentioned, a touching testimony. It's not just a story. It's a testimony of your life, and it's hurtful that it took the loss of your dad for you to recognize it, but it's still a blessing in that you did recognize at a very young age the consequences of obesity. And I think that's a point that all of us have to come to, prayerfully, not based upon or predicated upon the death of a loved one. Hopefully, we'll learn just by hearing wonderful testimonies like your own about how we can do better in controlling our weight, and that our weight does not have to become a death sentence, that we can turn it around and do better. Tell me why you think so many people who suffer from obesity have a problem losing the weight and keeping it off. I know you already mentioned one, the yo-yo dieting, going with the fads and the trend, but I'm sure there are other ways. Or the
Well, there are a ton of factors. Part of it has to do with genetics. Being overweight or having the disease of obesity is highly genetic. There's a very strong genetic factor in there. So there is that biological aspect. Also, when we think about it, our bodies are basically, they're kind of designed to hold on to extra adipose tissue, to extra body fat, as a safety mechanism. Fat is not like the worst thing in the world. I mean, it has a purpose. It is stored energy, right? If we think back to thousands of years ago, before there was refrigeration and all of these ways to preserve food, we really were very much tied to the seasons and to what was going on in agriculture, what was going on in nature. So there were periods where they would have food and there were periods when they would not. And so the body stores extra energy in the form of adipose tissue. So the body wants to try to hold on to that, right? When you add to that hormonal effects, when we add to that, oh gosh, even the environmental elements that are in place. Sometimes medications can help us to actually hold on to extra weight. So your body does not naturally want to lose weight. Further, when we add on to that biological genetic aspect that some of us may have, we also have to think about the cultural and the social and the environmental elements that are involved as well. I love that we're having these webinars because, again, for many people, carrying an extra added amount of weight to the point that it is unhealthy, it has been normalized. We feel that there's maybe not necessarily something that we can do about it. There are things in our environment that support that other side of the energy balance. Think about how much the normal environment in the United States supports people sitting, not moving as much, and also getting in food that what I call that is not very nutrient dense. We are surrounded around foods that have a lot of calories and don't have a lot of nutrition. And our bodies are so fearfully and wonderfully made that when we are not giving our bodies the nutrition that it needs, it knows that it is missing. And so we tend to continue to eat more and more. So there are all of these factors that people have to kind of, first of all, have an awareness about, and then not get overwhelmed, right? And then finding a mode or a method or a path to weight loss and weight management that is going to be specific, because we have different biologies, different preferences, different ecology, different environments. Because of all of this, what works for one person may not necessarily work for another. And so it really does take sometimes a concerted effort and a collaborative effort with sometimes with your medical health provider, sometimes pulling in, nutritionists, exercise physiologists, health coach. Sometimes it just takes having other folk to help us to get past some of these numerous challenges and barriers that we have to getting the extra weight off.
Wonderful. Thank you. I mean, the thing that I picked up on out of the most of everything you just said was about the cultural and the environmental. We spend a lot of time in our culture as people of color around food, and we know that breaking bread together brings fellowship. We know that it breaks down barriers. There's definitely some positives to breaking bread together. It's healthy, mentally, not always healthy to eat alone. But what do those meals look like? I think my husband mentioned earlier about the fellowship dinners at church, you know, the fried chicken, the red drink, all those things. And you also mentioned about how our body holds on to those foods that are not healthy, and we're still hungry because we're not getting the nutrients. And what came to my mind was the Lay's potato chip commercial. You know, marketing firms know how to get our attention. And you guys know in the commercial about Lay's, they say you can't eat just one. Well, it's not just because they taste good, but it's because it is addictive in a sense, because you really can't eat one because your body is holding on to whatever that chemical is in the processing of that food. So Nettie, that just speaks volumes for us trying to break old habits and really recognizing what the media presents to us in terms of things that we're drawn to that we shouldn't be drawn to. So are there some holistic steps that we need to follow to do a little bit better with counteracting these cultural and genetic and environmental issues, or even exercise that you think we should specifically do or start with that's going to help us really do better on turning this obesity problem around?
Sure, sure. If I could just add one other piece to a point that you just mentioned about the Lay's potato chips and how they say no one can eat just one. There is a resource that was one of the many kind of pivotal moments in changing my mindset. Scripture tells us that we have to renew our mind, right? That we can't necessarily be conformed with what is around us. We have to renew our minds and look at things from a correct perspective. And when we do that, it can really help our behavior to change. And one of the books that really helped me with the perspectives is called Salt, Sugar, Fat, and it is by Michael Moss. The subtitle of that book is How the Food Giants Hooked Us. Again, it's called Salt, Sugar, Fat. In this book, this food researcher, he talked about, and he went into some of these major food manufacturing companies, and many of them have actually a position called a food engineer, where their goal is to actually manipulate the levels of salt, sugar, fat in processed foods to drive cravings. I'm gonna say that again. They actually have people whose entire jobs are to determine what are the levels of salt, sugar, and fat to drive these cravings. And Ellen can still talk a whole lot more about this. So when I read that, you know, it really brought to my mind that I'm like, this battle with weight, it's not just about the weight. I honestly believe that when it has become a stronghold that keeps us beneath our God-given potential. Because when we are not at our best health, when our health is failing, it hinders other areas of our ability to live and to do the things that God would have us to do. So I think that exactly, which is what we're all about here with Hope. And so I really do think that we battle more against flesh and blood. I think we battle more against the calories. And just, there's a whole lot going on here. And I think that one of the key aspects is, again, if we make it a God thing and then take the steps that we need to take and consider those as actual acts of stewardship, ways to honor God with our body. And the steps will be different for different people. To give you an example of how my perspective changed, and this is one that I often share, I can recall most of my life, before I would eat, I would bless my food. And y'all let me know if you bless your food. And if y'all grew up learning this standard, thank you, Lord, for the food I'm about to receive to nourish my body. In the name of Jesus, amen. Sometimes we add extra stuff in there. But when I had that shift, I remember one time I was praying that, and it came very heavy in my spirit to say, I'm asking God to bless the food to nourish me, but I didn't put anything nourishing on my plate. So literally what I started to do was to change my prayer to say, Lord, can you bless my food choices? Now, y'all, that may sound simple and easy, but there have been times when I would be standing in the pantry, looking at the kids' cookies and this and that. And when I would say that prayer and mean that prayer, and it would allow me, it would empower me. Sometimes it would convict me to make a different choice. This whole mind, body, spirit thing, when we make things about God, if it means taking our medication, if it means going out to exercise. Growing up, I had exercise induced asthma. So for real, literally, I thought I was allergic to exercise. I failed gym in high school. That's how much I just didn't do it. But when I began to again make those changes and realize that God made our bodies to move, and I found an exercise, and for me, that happened to be walking and running. And I made that time alone with God, not something that I got to do, but it's something that I get to do. And I see it as an act of stewardship. This is an empowering element that I think can help us. So often we jump on challenges, or we just join groups, or we're just trying to muscle it through with willpower or want, but we have to really connect it to a strong why, and then use the empowerment that we have through God to help us to make these changes, whether your changes are food related, exercise related. If you have to add additional helps in, some people may use medication, some people may even have other interventions to help turn obesity around, but we are going to have to live this thing, right? It has to in some way become a part of not just something we're doing temporarily, it's something that we're doing every day. And when we devote that to God, then those changes that we make can be different. It just puts a whole different look, a different feel, a different purpose, a different intent behind it. And very often we don't do this. I'm going to add one other point. Look at how much this stronghold is ingrained, not just in the culture in general, but in the church culture. And I'm going to ask you to just think back to how many times have we been at church events, church fellowships, like Sister Minor mentioned, sometimes even hearing it from the pulpit, where not exercising or eating to the point of gluttony, I'm going to just call a spade, is not called that. It is called a good time or fellowship, or it is laughed about, or it is joked about. It is so common in our common culture, as well as even the church culture, to not take this. It truly, it is a disease, and there is help for this disease, but we don't treat it as such because we have, again, I'm going to come back to that. It has been normalized, and it is a stronghold. So when we flip this and just look at it as a condition that can be changed, and that should be changed if it is negatively impacting our health, then it can help us to, again, start to put some action behind the intent in a consistent way so that we can begin to make some of those changes and live those changes.
Wow. Wow, that's phenomenal. Thank you. That's, I mean, that's a lot to think about. But then again, it's stuff that we really should acknowledge on a daily basis. What are we consuming? Are we just eating this because the commercial was catchy? You know, I mean, did we purchase this because the engineer or who helped to create this processed food put the right thing in it to addict us to this salt and this sugar and this fat? And they don't only do it to us as adults. You know, there are many food products that are targeted towards children as well. We find that it used to be during the Saturday morning cartoons that they would run all the commercials for the sugary children's cereal.
Yes.
And none of those were healthy. None of them. They were pure sugar. All they did was make the child hyper. And many of us grew up on those cereal because our parents simply didn't know that those things were not healthy choices for us. So I think we grew up with the mindset of it's okay to eat these things. And it is okay in moderation. If you can eat a bag of chips once every 2 or 3 weeks and be okay with it, that's one thing. But when it comes to a situation of the disease of obesity, as Sister Nettie has said, that's when we start needing to look at habits, look at how we really view food, and make sure that we are viewing our body as a temple. So thank you, Sister Nettie. That was fabulous, wonderful information. I want to move now for just a moment to talk again about our sponsor, Nova Nordis. This is a production of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated. Dr. Jerry Young is our president. And we want to definitely acknowledge our major sponsor, Nova Nordis. Hope that you can see their logo on the screen here. Nova Nordis. We do want to thank them for their sponsorship. Unfortunately, they were unable to have a representative to speak tonight. Those of you who've been with us in previous weeks may have had an opportunity to listen to the wonderful speakers that they have brought on to join our panelists, Sister Nettie and Sister Ellen. But again, Nova Nordis. All right, we want to move to speak about nutrition, and our resident expert for all things nutrition is Sister Ellen Mcknight. So Sister Ellen, share with us a little bit about the work that you do.
Well, thank you, Sister Minor. Hello, everyone. My name is Ellen Mcknight. I am a nutrition, wellness, and public health advocate. And like they mentioned earlier, I am the principal of the Maxine Firm. And so what the Maxine Firm has the opportunity to do, we partner with public, private, and municipal entities to provide culturally appropriate health literacy, nutrition education programming across the state of Louisiana and across the southern region of the country, particularly in rural and urban communities. And so I'm so excited about this event this evening. You know, Sister Nettie was talking, and she's one of my partners in crime here in Louisiana. And every time she shares, I pick up something new. And so, she was mentioning so many important things. And as she was listing them out, I'm writing all these things down. And, I'm in summation, I'm like, she talked about food engineers, she talked about environment, she talked about access, she talked about, judgment as it relates to culture. She also talked about, our practices, in the church. And, in summation, I'm hearing barriers to, healthier living. And so, it's so important that she's bringing them up to raise awareness. And, as she raises awareness and, webinars like this raises awareness around those barriers to healthier living. Once we raise awareness, acknowledge them, once we know about them, we can then fight them. And so, my background is in human nutrition and dietetics. That's what my bachelor's is in, and I have a master's of public health. And, it's really, really important for me that as we raise awareness, as, we help others to identify these barriers, as Sister Nettie mentioned earlier, we are then equipped with tools and resources, like she mentioned that book. So, check it out, tools and resources to help us eliminate those barriers and, shift cultures around health in our communities, in our families, and individually. So that's who I am, and that's the work I do.
Wonderful, thank you. You are definitely well qualified to speak to us tonight about nutrition, which is so very important. What role does nutrition play in the NBC USA Hope Turn Obesity Around initiative?
And so, I'm really excited about HOPE, the HOPE initiative with the National Baptist Convention, and Dr. Minor and Sister Minor, and the work that you all have been doing for years around this health work. And it's really, really important because, like the HOPE approach, it's an integrative approach to overall wellness. It's not just one thing, right? So, it's the physical activity component, it's the cultural conversations, and it's the nutrition as well. And so often nutrition is really on the back burner. It is really preventative medicine. There's a saying that, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. And so if we can encourage folks to do the right thing on the front end, and we can, and as it relates to the nutrition, putting things in their body that are whole, that are right, that are just, that are pure, you know what I mean? I think that, we will all be the better for it, individually, our families, our churches, and our communities, right? And so it's just really, really, really important to be on the front end of it, because oftentimes, when you're on the other side, when you're not you're not a part of preventive medicine. You're in the treatment and the management phase. And that's when things have gotten so bad that, we have to treat this, or, we have to manage this chronic disease or this chronic illness. And a lot of times, one of the first things that they do, in addition to, medicine, they're going to restrict your nutrition. They're going to alter your diet. If you go into the doctor's office because you had a heart attack or some type of, experience related to your heart, one of the first things they do, they put you on a food restriction. They put you on a no salt diet, because what you eat is that crucial at that time to, saving your life. Or say, for example, we realize, hey, over a period of time, your kidneys have now failed. Well, you've been doing your thug thing for the last 20 years, drinking whatever you want to drink, eating what you want to eat, as it relates to salt, as it relates to sugar for, these 20 years. Now, if you drink one Coke too many, that's it for you, literally in a day, because I had a Coke today on Wednesday, as it relates, as a result of, my kidneys, being injured or my kidneys failing or being in dialysis, on Friday, I might be dead because, nutrition is just that important. So in summation, nutrition is important to the work that, Turn Obesity Around, National Baptist Commission, and H.O.P.E is doing, because, we really, really want to be on the front end of our health, not on the back end. So prevention is absolutely key.
Wonderful. I think I heard you say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or something like that.
I'm with it. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree. You've talked about the food engineer. I know Sister Nettie mentioned the people that are paid big bucks to manipulate the ingredients of processed foods so that we'll crave them. And you mentioned the same thing. So there's still some mystery around it, though, about why we crave certain things. And it's not always necessarily processed food. It could be something that we may be preparing at home that has a high level of sugar in it or a high level of salt. So why is it that so many of us are quote unquote addicted to the salt and the sugar? And you're on my pew, you're on my row, and on my pew or my chair, as we worship in now. More churches have chairs than pews now. So you're sitting in my lap almost when you talk about an addiction to sugar. So share with us about that addiction and why it's so prevalent, and what can we do to overcome it?
I think that's a great question. And so when you talk about, addictions or obsessions with sugar or even salt, mainly added sugars, there's some research that suggests that, one of the reasons why folks love these two so much is because of the neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine, that is released whenever you consume these things. So, it's like that reward circuit, if you will. And the reward circuit, so when you eat this added sugar, this dopamine is released, these opioids are released, and that kind of parallels with drugs. So this kind of same thing happens when you are taking I would say street drugs or something like that. So like heroin and things like that. And so when you take those things, those neurotransmitters are released, and it gives you a really good feeling. And, you come up on a high and then you come back down, but then you want to feel those things again. And so you just have to be really, really, really careful about the added sugar that you intake, the amount of added sugar you intake. Of course, we want to make certain that, most of the sugar that we intake is natural sugar, coming from, our fruits and things like that. But, you want to make certain that everything is in moderation, because sugar is sugar. But then also with the salt, our bodies need salt, but a certain amount. So, that's the dopamine, the oxalate, the neurotransmitters. Those are the parallels that we find with the addiction in salt and sugar. But moreover, let's talk about some patterns, and let's talk about culture, and let's talk about some things that in developing our palate. Because oftentimes, at a young age, if you start, like you talked about those sugary cereals, if you start out your children with, eating sugar constantly or having a high tolerance for sugar or developing a high tolerance for salt. That's just going to continue as they get older, right? So say, for example, there's some folks that are like, hey, the yellow arch sweet tea is super sweet, okay? But to the next person, they're like, it's just right. You know what I mean? There's some folks that'll say the yellow arch fried potatoes are super salty. And then the next person will be like, no, they're just right. What am I saying? I'm saying is we have to develop our taste buds are developed over time. And so if you start out your children, or even you as an adult make a decision that, hey, I need to kind of reduce my added sugar intake. I need to reduce my salt intake. You're just gonna, once you do those things and start cutting back, eventually you'll taste it and be like, oh, that's just too sweet for me, or oh, that's just too salty for me. But one of the best things that you can do is start your children earlier, change some of the patterns and the cooking methods and preparation methods around the house. Like, say, for example, like I used to eat, like whenever I would go to IHOP with my friends, I used to eat the syrup. I get refined pancakes with syrup. But at some point when I started changing my diet, I was like, hey, I want the whole grain pancakes that they have there, because they have those at IHOP. And they also have sugar-free syrup. And when I started using that, it was like, hey, I couldn't taste the difference anymore. You know what I mean? I'm from the South. I loved sweet tea. But I started, identifying that, hey, this is not good for my kidneys. This is not good for my blood sugar. Type 2 diabetes runs in my family, which, a lot of research has linked that to Alzheimer's and dementia. Added sugar is not good for my mental health. It's associated with anxiety and depression. So that's the reward circuiting that we talked about earlier. And so, as a result of that, now when I go out to restaurants, I'm going to order a glass of water. I'm going to drink that first. And then I'm going to order another glass of water, drink half of that, order my sweet tea, and then dilute that sweet tea with water. So how? I get the volume, so I quench my thirst, but then I cut the sugar. And so just small things like that. When kids are consuming juice at a young age, it's the recommendation, that they only have a certain amount of juice a day. Well, now certain organizations are encouraging parents to always cut the juice with water, even if it's 100% juice. So you asked about the addiction. There are some opioids in these products. Naturally, there is dopamine, these neurotransmitters that are released in the system. But in addition to that, we have some patterns that are developed from our childhood. And as parents, and grandparents, we can be proactive about, watching and curtailing and changing some of the foods, sugar and salt that our kids eat, y'all's kids.
Wow. So we can control this if we're cognizant of what we're eating, mindful of it. I hear people all the time say to eat slowly, so you taste your food. I think you kind of hit on that a little bit when you talked about how some people have trained their palate to where they know when something is too salty or they know when something is too sweet. Conversely, other people have trained their palate where they crave more and more of the sugar. So we want to move to the end of the spectrum where we can very quickly realize, okay, this is too much, and move to a healthier option. I think that's fabulous. I want to talk a little bit about the yo-yo dieting that Sister Nettie talked about in her personal testimony. Talk a little bit about how nutrition and yo-yo dieting work together, or don't work together, I should say.
Yeah, so Sister Nettie brought up some really good points about, bad dieting and how, in an effort to be well, putting your body in a constant state of shock because of restricted diets over and over again, can actually cause your body harm over a long term. So, there's nothing new under the sun. So there's like keto diets, there's paleo diets, there's the lemonade diet, there's Atkins diet. that whenever you think about diet, you really want to kind of get that out of your vocabulary. You really want to move more towards lifestyle changes. And what lifestyle changes give you the opportunity to do is implement small things throughout your meals, throughout your food intake that contribute to your overall health and contribute to your overall that contributes to overall improved nutrition intake. And so when I talk about substitutions, I'm talking about making changes across the entire My Plate that help benefit you overall and keep you away from chronic diseases. And so on My Plate, there are grains, there are proteins, there are fruit, there are vegetables, and there's dairy. These are the recommendations put forth by the USDA. It took the place of my food pyramid. But essentially what that My Plate is encouraging you to do is every time you sit down to your plate, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you want to make certain that you have a variety of colors on your plate. You want to make sure you have a variety of foods on your plate. And we also want to encourage you to try foods from different cultures on your plate. Why? Because the variety of colors particularly offer your body different vitamins and minerals. We're not eating for the heck of it. We should be eating for the health of it, right? And so if we're eating for the health of it, we want to make certain that we get all of our vitamins, all of our minerals, all of our antioxidants. And so that's why you need the red foods, the blue foods, the purple foods, the yellow foods, the orange foods. All of those foods do different things. And I always, give the example, of the red foods. They're high in lycopene, and we know that lycopene helps prostate cancer. The blue foods and the purple foods, those are high in antioxidants. And the antioxidants help fight free radicals that are found in our bodies. And we know free radicals cause cancer. Orange foods are important because they have beta carotene. And we know that beta carotene helps with our eyes and our vision. And, we need our dark green leafy vegetables for a number of things, but we know that those are also high in calcium. So, it's really important that we eat a variety of food, a variety of colors. We make certain that we consume our whole grains instead of white grains. If we're trying to stay away from type 2 diabetes and lower our cholesterol, we want to make certain that we are consuming fresh fruit and vegetables. We also want to make certain that we are consuming lean proteins and healthy fat, because we know that healthy fat contributes to improve overall mental health as it relates to depression and anxiety. And we want to make certain that if we are still consuming milk, that is low fat, 2%, 1%. And then also, if we're not doing milk anymore, then there are other options like almond milk, cashew milk, so on and so forth. Because what we really want from the milk is we want the vitamin D and the calcium, and we don't want the fat and the sugar. So, there's opportunities everywhere for you to make small changes across the spectrum as it relates to your nutrition. So I hope I answered your question, Sister Nettie. Not Sister Nettie, Sister Mine.
You did. You answered it beautifully. So moderation is one of the major things I heard there. Moderation, instead of yo-yo dieting, and lifestyle changes if we're really going to turn obesity around. And you guys notice from our pictorial here, where we're turning obesity around, the way that the traffic sign is pointing is the person is just making a turn, making a change. It's not a full circle. It's not a 360, because if we're doing 360, we're ending up right back where we started. So instead, it is making better decisions about our plate, better decisions about our exercise, and in cases where it is necessary, better decisions about medication management with the assistance of our provider. Want to mention again that our sponsor is Novo Nordisk, and we want to, of course, acknowledge again the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated. Dr. Jerry Young is our president. Of course, this is a production of our Hope Health Ministry. We do have some members of the Hope team on tonight, in addition to our wonderful panelists who we appreciate. Give them some love, everybody. Nettie and Ellen for doing a fabulous job, and we are so thankful and so blessed to have them as part of our team. But we also have with us tonight Sister Linda Carper, Sister Bettina Campbell. You saw Dr. Miner earlier. We also have Sister Fanny Fair with us, and she is the individual who for many, many years was the coordinator of National Baptist Congress Health Fair. She is still a part of our HOPE team. Sister Fair has dialed in, and we just want to acknowledge your presence and say how happy we are that you joined us tonight, Sister Fair. We also want to acknowledge on our call tonight, we have, since we're talking about the Midwest region, we have Sister Teresa Fales Farr, who is our Midwest regional point person. And we have Sister Janet McElrath, who assists Sister Farr. In addition to that, we want to acknowledge Pastor Wallace Mills. He's with us tonight. He is the president of the Wolverine State Convention, which is one of the larger conventions in the Midwest region. I want to bring both our panelists back up for just a moment to give them an opportunity to give closing remarks or closing thoughts, and to answer some questions as well. So let me take a moment and just go to the question box here. We have a question from Ms. Ethel Hill, who hails from the Mississippi Delta. We actually have two questions from her. The first one is, what about ice cream that does not have sugar in it? From a health, from a nutrition standpoint, your thoughts on that? And then her second question, is honey better for us than sugar? And I'll let whichever one of you wants to take that question.
I'll take a stab at those. So the first question is ice cream with no sugar better? So it definitely sounds better. My question would be, there's something in the ice cream that is causing it to be sweet. And so it just depends on what that something is. Is it a natural sweetener or is it an artificial sweetener? And oftentimes artificial sweeteners, such as aspartame, they are like 1,000% sweeter than other sweeteners so that you can have less of it. But some of those artificial sweeteners are laden with chemicals and additives and things like that that have adverse effects on the other parts of your body. So if it is no sugar added, I would encourage you, not just with the ice cream, but with anything that has a food label, to look at the food label and look at the ingredients. And if it says no sugar added, I'm pretty sure somewhere on there might be an artificial sugar. And if it's not an artificial sugar, if it's like a stevia or like stevia, extract or something like that, or a honey, just kind of check it out. But if it's an artificial sweetener, I would encourage you to look up that artificial sweetener and look up how it affects your body. So that is but if you had to choose between sugar with ice cream and sugar that is sugar-free, I would always encourage you to do the sugar-free ice cream. Sherbet is another, sugar-free sherbet is also another option. And then sugar-free sherbet. And then also, if you just like that, that kind of like that cold, sweet taste, I would also encourage folks to, lean more towards yogurt that isn't as sweet. If you want that sweeter taste, because it has probiotics in it, and it's a lot better for your gut health. So read the label, check to see what it's sweetened with. Is it artificial or is it real? And if you can meander over to yogurt land, that would be great because of the microbes and the good bacteria in there. You also asked about honey. Honey is super awesome because it's an antimicrobial. Is it better than sugar? That depends on which research article that you pick up, because there's a lot of back and forth with it. But when you talk about sugar, I'm assuming you're talking about white processed sugar. I'm always going to go with honey because it is a natural sweetener. You can't overdo it because it is still sugar. But like I said, it is antimicrobial. it's a little bit better for you in that way. But when I'm sweetening my teas and things like that, I'm definitely going to go for honey instead of the processed white sugar. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Can I add one thing on to something that Sister Ellen said that I think is so powerful when she talked about how to check out for the artificial sweeteners that are on there and how they are, like you said, 1,000 times more sweet than standard sugar. And remember when she was talking earlier about how it actually affects our neurotransmitters. The biblical principle that I connect this to is what we feed grows, right? So, scripture tells us over and over again, the more we read the word of God, the more we will love the word of God, the more it is, and the same applies even with food. The more we eat sweet foods, the more we will crave sweet foods. And there have actually been studies when people have switched from drinking sodas that have actual refined sugar in them or help us, high fructose corn syrup, and they have gone to some of these artificial sweeteners, that it has not necessarily caused them to lose weight, even though there was a lower caloric, because of how some of these artificial sweeteners drive cravings and impact our system. And I love that you mentioned the yogurt. One other option that I really love is sometimes if you just take frozen bananas, if you take a really ripe banana, cut it up and put it in the freezer and let it get hard. So I actually go to the grocery store and buy them old, and they will give them to you for cheaper. Eating healthy is not always more expensive. So I go get super almost overripe bananas. If you freeze them, and then when you take them out the freezer and let them thaw just a tiny bit and put them in a blender, it will turn into a consistency. I promise you, it will remind you of banana ice cream. And literally all it is frozen bananas. And then sometimes you want to get a little fancy, you can just, put some other fruits in there. You can have strawberry banana ice cream. And literally the ingredients are just those two, because that's a natural sweetener. As Sister Ellen said, we want to go towards more natural. The closer we are to God's hand of provision, the better we are. God made honey, he made bananas, but he didn't make this high fructose corn syrup or this highly refined white sugar. So just wanted to add that tip in as well. Try that frozen banana ice cream. It's delicious.
Wow, and I agree. I have had the frozen banana ice cream. It is great. So thank you both for your answers to those questions. And thank you, Sister Hill, for asking. We have another question from Janet McElrath, and her question is, and I believe this question is to everyone, it appears, but I'm going to ask of our panelists. It says, does your church have a health, food, and exercise policy? And she's suggesting that would be a good start from the top to the membership. So that reminds me a little bit of the banning of the fried chicken at the church where my husband serves. So a policy at your church, or I'll take it a step further, how would one implement such a policy?
Sister Nettie, go ahead.
Oh gosh, well, I as with most things, it is most effective when it comes from the top. And that's one of the things that Sister Ellen and I were both so impressed about when we first learned about, Dr. Minor banning the fried chicken at his church. It came from the top. Oftentimes when I do interventions outreach, I guess, and helping church health ministries. And Sister Ellen, you may agree, a lot of times we may start working with the culinary committee or the individuals that are over certain events, but unless it goes to a higher level, and I love that the question was posed, is there a policy? Like what are the standards? What are we looking for as it relates to types of snacks when we're having vacation Bible school? When we're having, these meals or repasts or that kind of sort of thing, are there certain standards? So it would be wonderful if from the top there was just a set of changes that were put in place. And again, you don't have to change everything all at once. Small changes that are sustainable are far more effective than big things that you only do. That's why I'm kind of not a big challenge person as it relates to activity. Because what happens is we'll do it for like the length of that challenge. And as soon as the challenge is over, we're like, "Ooh, I'm glad that's done." If we did something and made these changes more smaller but sustainable, that would make a very big difference. So I love the concept of a policy. And a part of that too is to also kind of think beyond just programs. A lot of times in health ministries that I am a part of, a lot of times we will have programs where we will do certain things. I had a program myself that I called Pew to Pavement, where we encourage people to not just do a 5K, because we started off with 5K, but that was an activity for only a certain period of time. What we did is we changed it to say, we're not just training for this walk or just going to do this one walk. The program was changed to say, we're trying to help people to develop a discipline of walking or running. And we called it a spiritual physical discipline. The difference with that is that even though the program ended, because we phrased it in that way and we framed it in that way, there were several members that participated that still to this day, I see them post on Facebook that, we're not coming together yet because of pandemic, but they were like, I was out at LSU Lakes and I ran this. And we even had some people who were not walking to complete half and full marathons and are now continuing it, because it wasn't a program. It was more of framing it as what is the outcome that we're trying to do. And again, tying it to a spiritual principle. We call it to a spiritual and physical discipline. It kind of helps. So I think those help. Start it from the top and go beyond thinking so program oriented to process, because as it relates to our health, we have to enjoy the journey, y'all. It's not about just losing the weight or trying to get to a certain number, because then what happens? That, again, that goes back to the yo-yo. When we can enjoy the journey, when we can make the process part of something that we're doing and that is regular, then we can see sustainable change.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Last question for tonight is, can either of you recommend programs to educate the membership on healthy eating? And I think a couple of those have already been typed in the chat. Sister Linda Carper and Dr. Miner typed a few of them. But any programs, I think you mentioned a publication or a book earlier, Sister Nettie, particular programs that a church could do as a corporate group to learn more about healthy eating.
So you going, Sister Nettie?
No, ma'am, you please.
So there are a lot of programs and curriculums really that will help churches implement healthier eating practices and nutrition practices across their congregations. So some of them, I always lift this up, but a free resource is always the government. No matter where you live, a lot of times there is a land grant institution in your state. There's an 1890 and an 1862. And so here in Louisiana, our 1890 institution is Southern University, and they have an ag or an extension office. And that extension office has science-based curriculums that are implemented for free to different organizations, schools, churches, that teach healthy eating practices, healthy cooking practices, so on and so forth. The 1862 institution with the 1890, with an extension office that goes out into community, they extend themselves to the community, which are their counties, is LSU. So if you are in Mississippi, there's Mississippi State, I believe, but then there's also Alcorn universities. And these institutions have satellite offices across the state in different counties that provide this programming. Myself, I've had the opportunity to implement nutrition education curriculums in faith-based settings. I know Sister Millie does the same thing in faith-based settings with a hybrid model for nutrition and hybrid model for physical activity. And then also with the HOPE initiative, Sister Nettie and Pastor Montgomery have a health ambassador initiative, a curriculum that they have been implementing through HOPE and through the Congress and the convention to kind of equip churches to make healthier decisions. So, doing an asset map internally, what assets do we have inside of the church? What are the organizations that are around the community that serve the church as it relates to healthier eating, healthier lifestyles, primary care, mental health, so on and so forth. So There are a lot of public entities that serve churches as it relates to wellness and nutrition and public health, so on and so forth. Like I said, the extension office in your state is an excellent resource. Because of COVID, you can Zoom anybody into your church at this point. So yeah, you definitely want to look into programs like that. But then also the question that was raised early about the policy, I think that was a great question. The policy that, like I said, banning no fried chicken, an amazing policy since shockwaves across the nation. But there are other things that you can do, like Sister Nettie said, policy changes instead of programs. So, she talked about the kids. So if we're doing Vacation Bible School, I know at my church, we were giving away chips. Well, guess what? At our church, we give our kids baked chips, right? At our church, we don't give our kids candy, after children's church, we give them, fruit, or we give them, nuts or things like that. At our church, we only provide 100% juice. We don't serve red drink. At our church, we make certain that if you're having a repast at our church, we don't want to serve food that will, bring the next funeral along quicker. It just depends on, how you want to frame your policy. And I think it's just it starts with a conversation. You can figure out what the parishioners care about, and you can kind of shape your policy, around that. So it's up to you.
Wonderful. And it's not one size fits all. I think one of the things that we talk about in all of our health ambassador training in the Hope Health Ministry is that it's not going to be the same for every church. Banning fried chicken might work beautifully at our church, and it did, but at another church it might not, or that might not be the problem area at every single church. Other churches, the issue might be the sugary drinks, or it may not even be directly related to food. It could be some other habit that directly affects our health in a negative way. For example, it could be smoking. You'll ask people, if you do a survey in your congregation, health-related survey, asking individuals if they smoke. Some of us good Christians are going to tell a fib on that survey and say no, but yet your waste can or your parking lot may be littered with cigarette butts. So it's obvious that your focus area might need to be smoking cessation. It's about the whole man, the whole person, and what we do, how we handle this temple. Thank you for mentioning our health ambassador training, which is a free training that we do across the country for congregations and the communities that they serve. The trainings are available. Thank you, Sister Linda Carper, for posting that in the chat on our Hope YouTube channel. Available also if you go to www.hopenbc.com. There are a plethora of resources that our health ambassadors offer. You're meeting tonight our nutrition expert and our health coach. We also have a mental health expert, Sister Bettina Campbell, who's actually on tonight. She's a member of our team. We have Sister Linda Carper, who does our line dancing, our Christian line dancing, and it is focused on helping our seasoned saints stay active. We have many others. I won't try to name everybody on our team, but again, the health ambassador training teaches congregations how to implement some of these changes in ways that fit that congregation. Again, not one size fits all. It's going to be your health ministry is going to look as different as each of us looks different. So thank you, ladies, again, for being such wonderful panelists. Thank you for blessing us with your wealth of knowledge. We again do want to recognize our president of the National Baptist Convention, USA Incorporated, Dr. Jerry Young. We want to acknowledge also our General Secretary, Alvin Edwards, our chair of the Federal Faith-Based Development Initiative, Dr. Alvin Love, and of course, our National Director of NBC USA Liaison to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Miner. Again, our sponsor tonight was Novo Nordisk. We do thank them. We do also want to acknowledge that there are some circumstances where the dietary changes, the lifestyle changes, the adding more physical movement into our lives does not always work for everyone. There are some individuals who do need medication to help manage their weight, to help manage some of the health disparities that come on because of carrying excess weight. There are some individuals who even have to have surgical procedures to help them keep the weight off. But we do want to point out that those are the last resorts after everything has been exhausted in terms of nutrition, exercise, and other lifestyle changes. Those are legitimate solutions for some individuals, but I would say not for most people. Most of us are able to manage it if we follow some of the wonderful suggestions that have already been made tonight. Sister Nettie and Sister Ellen, any other comments on the medication or the surgical measures that are out there? Nothing else?
No,
All
I
right.
think you hit them all on the. I think you hit them all on the head.
Wonderful. Thank you. We appreciate you all. We want to thank all of our participants tonight, whether you are watching us via Facebook, whether you are participating via Zoom, or whether you are watching us on YouTube, and even to those who will watch us in the future on Facebook and on YouTube. We thank you for taking time out to participate in this production of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated Hope Health Ministry. We again acknowledge Pastor Mills, president of the Wolverine State Convention, for being with us tonight. I do want to open up the line once we go off social media and give him an opportunity to speak to our Zoom participants. We'll also give an opportunity to Sister McElrath and Sister Farr, and of course, Sister Fanny Fair as well. This will end our Facebook and YouTube presentation. Again, we thank you for participating. Thank you for joining us tonight. And it is our prayer that something has been said tonight that will help the constituents of the National Baptist Convention turn obesity around. Again, we acknowledge Nova Nordis and we thank them for their very generous sponsorship. We are signing off on social media. Those of you who are watching us via Zoom, if you'll just hold on.